Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1961 film Konga. Now, Konga is one of those films that was made to cash in on King Kong years after the fact, and it is a UK American co-production. It is more of a science fiction horror film than an adventure movie like King Kong or Son of Kong, or even a fantasy film like Mighty Joe Young. Now, this movie has its fans, and to each their own, but in my opinion, it deserves its low rating on IMDb. It gets a 3.9 out of 10 on IMDb. I would actually give it an even lower rating. It also gets like a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think it deserves that and then some, because to me personally, Konga was a Konga-sized pile of shit. This was an awful movie. This was really boring. It was tedious. It wasn't very exciting or fun. It had some decent performances by some of the cast. Some of the ideas behind it, or the ideas in it, I didn't mind. But overall, I don't think they did as much with them as they could have. And honestly, I thought this was a pretty shitty film. This is definitely the first film during this marathon that I've seen that is really bad, in my opinion. Now, the movie is directed by John Lemont. It's written by Herman Cohen and Aben Candel, and it stars Michael Gough, Alfred from Batman 1989 and Batman Returns and the Schumacher Batman films. He's in this as Dr. Charles Decker. He's the lead. He's this botanist. This mad scientist, botanist guy, who ends up creating Konga. Now, Michael Gough is one of the few things about this film that I actually thought was worth mentioning. He was great. I loved his maniacal performance. It was great to see Michael Gough, a young Michael Gough, in a different film. This is kind of like the precursor to Alfred's career as a butler for Bruce Wayne. It was really fun to watch him work in this. I just wish this performance was in a better film. Margo Johns plays Margaret, his assistant slash secretary. Jess Conrad plays Bob Kenton, who's a teenager in his class. Claire Gordon plays Sandra Banks, who is a younger girl that he looks at as a protege and also a potential lover. Austin Trevor plays Dean Foster. Jack Watson plays Superintendent Brown. George Pastell plays Professor Tagore. Vanda Godsell plays Bob's mother. And Stanley Morgan plays Inspector Lawson. And there's a few other actors and actresses as well, including Paul Stockman, who played Konga in the ape suit. Now, the movie features a score by Gerard Sherman, which this score by Gerard Sherman really doesn't fit the film. There's like this theme near the end that's all happy, and it's a scene where Konga's getting shot by the British military, the British Army. So I'm just like, why is this music all happy and everything? This doesn't really fit. Also, there's music that plays in certain scenes that's supposed to enhance the drama, but all it does is make me crack up because it's the typical dramatic music. And cinematography by Desmond Dickinson is not much. It's edited by Jack Slade. That's not really much there either. The movie's about 90 minutes long, and at first I was kind of into it. But as soon as it gets to the 40-minute mark, it really starts to drag. It really starts to drag its feet. It gets really heavy. It gets top-heavy with dialogue. There's not a lot that happens. And with Konga, well, I'll talk about why that's an issue soon enough. Now, this movie was put into production following the incredible success of Herman Cohen's previous British-made film, The Horrors of the Black Museum, that also featured Michael Gough, Nat Cohen, and of Anglo-Amalgamated, and asked Cohen for another exploitation film, because Anglo-Amalgamated released the film in the Eastern Hemisphere, and Horrors of the Black Museum was inspired by the murders of Rue Morgue. Excuse me. Which I believe also had to deal with some ape that was going around killing people. So, as Cohen had long admired King Kong, he thought of a giant ape film shot in color. Due to Cohen's success with his I Was a Teenage Werewolf, AIP, an incompetent production, used I Was a Teenage Gorilla as the working title. Cohen paid RKO Pictures $25,000 for the rights of the name Kong for exploitation purposes. Cohen recalled the special effects for the film was one of the first giant monster movies shot in color, and it took 18 months to complete. The climactic scene in London streets was possible when the producer was able to convince a police precinct captain that the scenes could be effectively staged late at night on essentially empty streets. A combination of miniature sets, an actor in a gorilla suit, played by Paul Stockman, and the use of Paul Stockman was the actor in the gorilla suit. Paul Stockman didn't play the actor who was in the gorilla suit. And use of studio mats also made the technical aspects of the production look better than its meager budget would allow. I don't really see that. I still saw this as a really low budget movie. I thought the effects in older movies that I've seen, like Son of Kong and King Kong and Mighty Joe Young, were better than any of the effects I saw in Konga. There were certain scenes in this that were just absolutely pathetic. And I'll talk about them a little bit later. So, the film came out. It didn't really have that much of reception. It appeared as a part of a double bill with Master of the World. The film was reviewed in the New York Times, where film critic Eugene Archer noted it played to misplaced guffaws, and further described as the British Konga is nothing more than an overblown King Kong, hamily played by Michael Gough and an improbable-looking ape. Actually does sum the film up rather nicely there, if you ask me. Now, an interesting thing is that the movie not only inspired novelization of the film's screenplay, which was released around the time of the film's original release in 1961. In January of 1961, the novelization was by Dean Owen. It also inspired a comic book series. From 1960 to 1965, Charlton Comics published 23 issues of the comic Konga. It also included work by Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko. The series was renamed Fantastic Giants in issue number 24, which turned out to be the last issue of the series. Now, Konga also appeared in the 3-issue miniseries that started off as The Return of Konga, before it was renamed Konga's Revenge with issue number 2. The series ran from 1962 to 1964, and this was followed by a one-shot reprint issue in 1968. Now, the adaptation of the film done by Charlton Comics came out about a year before the film reached theaters, which is really curious. It spawned a series that was easily the most successful of any based on a movie at the time, and Konga was not returned from the dead. Rather, a second ape was introduced and was given a new serum that transformed him into a second Konga. So, I find it crazy. They go from... They take this movie, which features a giant ape who's mind-controlled by Michael Gough, who's a mad scientist, and he uses this ape to do his evil bidding, and there's a comic book series that was inspired by it where Konga is like a superhero. You know, he's a giant ape who fights other monsters. I find it's kind of funny, actually. It's definitely... The movie is almost nothing like the comic whatsoever. So, the film's plot is actually pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It features British botanist Dr. Charles Decker, played by Michael Gough, who comes back from Africa after a year presumed dead. The movie actually opens up with a bang. The score is really loud in the beginning and has this kind of really weird Technicolor opening credits. And all of a sudden you just cut to this plane flying over some jungle, and then boom, it explodes. And you think, oh no, who was in that plane? Apparently it was Dr. Charles Decker. People thought he was dead, but actually they find out that he's still alive. During that same year, he comes across a wave growing plants and animals to an enormous size. He brings back a baby chimpanzee, which he names Konga, to test out his theory. Decker goes insane after he discovers a serum that turns his chimpanzee subject into a ferocious gorilla-sized ape. Actually, that doesn't happen immediately. See, this film kind of builds up the different... I'm trying to think of the right word for it. It doesn't build up the different. What am I talking about? This is live, folks. Live. It it shows you different ways, different versions of Konga. So it shows you different times and different moments where Decker is using the serum. And I wouldn't really say it drives him insane. I think he's already crazy. He's already mad with power and greed from the very beginning. So what he finds out is that these plants that he's found in Africa that he got from this witch doctor, he finds out that they have remarkable properties. That if their juices or the if you create a serum with the plants, you can find a way to merge the plant DNA with animal or human DNA, because apparently there's some human properties to them, which isn't really that explained that well. But apparently what it does is it makes things grow. So he first uses his first batch of serum on Konga, and it turns him from a baby chimpanzee to an adult chimpanzee. Then he uses the serum again, and it turns him into a gorilla, which is definitely strange. Why doesn't it turn him into an even bigger chimpanzee? Why does it turn him into a gorilla? It is one of those things that definitely did make me scratch my head. Now, the plants that he's using are actually a pretty cool creation too. They are these giant man-eating plants, or meat-eating plants. Not necessarily man-eating, but they can eat man. They can eat men, that's for sure, or women. So they're definitely they're all for equality, so to speak. So these plants, you have the Venus flytraps, and then you also have these the other plants that have they have like this bell sort of look to them, and the top opens up, and you can put something in there. And you have the ones that were all the flypaper plants, which are like have these little sticky things that come out, and the flies come in and they land on these sticky things. So they have those. So I thought that was pretty cool. Decent effect too. So this is where the film is getting me. It's grabbing me with Michael Gough's crazy, entertaining performance as this mad botanist, Dr. Charles Decker, and you have giant man-eating plants. You got a serum that makes a chimpanzee turn into a giant gorilla. But then it really starts to get tired and played out really quickly. He uses the chimp, who's now a gorilla. He uses him to do his bidding, which is to take out people who know about what he's doing or competition. And there's these multiple scenes where he's hypnotizing Konga, and it's clearly a guy in a suit, and it's not really the best looking suit either. And it looks pretty tattered. And apparently even the actor who played Konga was kind of pissed at that. Because Paul Stockman was chosen to play the gorilla, and he was even annoyed when his gorilla costume was returned from England in bad shape. Because it was in really bad shape, you could tell. And so, excuse me. So he's hypnotizing Konga, and it looks like Konga is stoned. It looks like this guy in an ape suit is either drunk off his ass or stoned. I mean, it's this attempt to try to make it look like it's hypnotized, but the Konga is just, this guy in a gorilla suit just going back like this. Eyes moving back and forth, following the thing. It's so bad. And so He mesmerizes Konga. He sends it to London to kill all his enemies who want more credit in the scientific community that he already has. Among his targets is Dean Foster, the dean of the school he's teaching at, played by Austin Trevor, who doesn't believe in his experiments and wants him to stop. Professor Tagore, played by George Pastell, who's this kind of Indian guy who's doing similar work as he is, so he decides to take him out. Bob Kenton, played by Jess Conrad, who's the lover of Sandra Banks, played by Claire Gordon, whom a young woman the Doctor wants for himself. And after Konga strangles Bob Kenton to death, Decker attempts to make Sandra his own. This doesn't sit well with his assistant / secretary, whom he agreed to marry her earlier in the film, Margaret, played by Margo Johns. She attempts to get even by giving Konga even more of the serum and also trying to hypnotize him, but for some reason this doesn't work because I guess she gave him more of the sermon. She gave him more of the sermon. She showed him the light of Jesus Christ. Hallelujah! Konga is saved. So. She gave him more of the serum, which causes him to grow to enormous size. But she becomes his first victim, and this is where things get really pathetic with the effects. As Konga, you see this guy in an ape suit, and he's in a miniature set, and he grabs what is supposed to be Margaret, and it is clearly a doll. Like, it is so obviously a doll that it is just uproarious. It is so bad. It looks like Konga is carrying around a troll doll or something. And he throws her across the room, goes in a rampage, destroys the lab, breaks through the roof of the building because he's now gotten even bigger. Now he's supersized. He grabs Decker in one of his enormous paws, and this is all while Sandra is being eaten by one of Decker's carnivorous plants by a Venus flytrap. It's kind of disappointing because it doesn't eat her all the way. You just see it chomping on her arm a little bit, and then he rampages through London, but not really. He just kind of stomps through there, and people run away. And then for some reason, he just stops in his tracks in front of Big Ben. He doesn't climb it or anything. He doesn't hit it. He just stops. He just stops and just stands there, looking stoned, in front of Big Ben. And then here comes the British Army and they shoot him. One of the guys even misses with a bazooka at point blank range. I don't know how the fuck this guy missed. I mean, you have a bazooka, and you're like, oh, this is like this giant ape, and this guy misses, and he misses wide left, and actually hits Big Ben. And I guess Big Ben is made out of super metallic alloy or something, like adamantium, because the bazooka round didn't do the missile that basically, didn't really do anything, didn't cause any damage. So they just shoot Konga. He just stands there and does nothing. He throws Decker to the ground, and then he gets shot, and then blown up. Well, not really blown up. He gets shot with bazookas, but really he just gets shot by the military, and then he dies. And then after his death, Konga reverts back to a baby chimpanzee, and is clearly a fake chimpanzee. So it's pretty corny looking. And then the end plays on the film's title. Well, I wouldn't say title. I mean, then the end shows up. The end credits show, and then it's the end, and then the end credits actually start playing, and that's Konga. It really is not that. There's not that much to it. For the most part, it's really tedious and boring, full of way too much dialogue, not enough scenes of Konga. The giant ape scenes, the the supersized ape sequences don't really show up and don't start until an hour and 17 minutes into the movie, and the film's only 90 minutes, so I personally felt that was way too long of a wait for what the film was advertised as. I didn't know the film was supposed to be a mad scientist movie where some mad scientist supersizes a chimpanzee from a baby chimpanzee to an adult chimpanzee and then to a gorilla, and then it's the gorilla form for most of the movie doing all of the other stuff, and then finally grows to giant size. And because he was given an extra dose of serum, apparently that's what made him be able to no longer be hypnotized. But at the same time, it's like, why the hell did Margaret inject him with even more serum? Did she think that was going to work out? Like, what did she think was going to happen? Like, I don't even understand why she even did that. Clearly, it showed that Konga would have been fine enough if you hypnotized him and you could have killed Charles Decker, Dr. Decker that way. But no, we got to make him giant because we need to have the sequence that will get the people who are into King Kong, so we can actually have the King Kong exploitation movie this film was marketed as. But yeah, I mean, it's a kooky idea, but it's not kooky enough. It takes itself a bit too seriously. The only times I'm laughing at it is at unintentional bits of hilarity because of how bad the effects are, or how inappropriate some of the music stings are in the film, and so on. But overall, there's really not a lot of entertainment to be found here. I was so disinterested in the film at a certain point after the 40-minute mark that I brought up my Washington State driver's manual and started reading it because I'm trying to work on getting my permit. And I just thought, you know what? This driver's manual sounds more interesting to me right now than Konga. That's really bad when a driver's manual is more interesting than your movie. So, yeah, the film really didn't have a lot going for it, except for Michael Gough and a few moments of unintentional humor. But other than that, it's pretty much a fail all across the board. I definitely would not recommend Konga unless you're really curious to see Michael Gough in a film where he plays a mad scientist before he played Alfred in the Batman movies. If you're really curious to see Michael Gough in a movie and you want to see his performance and you're a big fan of his, okay, fine. Or if you're doing a giant ape marathon like I am. But if you're not planning on doing any of those things, like if you're not planning on doing a giant ape marathon anytime soon, or you're not a big fan of Michael Gough and you're really curious to see his performance in this, I would definitely recommend you skip Konga. Go join a Konga line instead. I mean, that would be a lot more fun than sitting down and watching this film. So, I don't know what else to say about Konga, except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give it 1.5 out of 5. Actually, no, I think that's too high. I'm going to give it 1, because it was a really awful film for the most part. The only thing I really liked about it was Michael Gough, some of the ideas behind the film with the giant flesh-eating plants, and some of the unintentional bits of humor. But other than that, like I said earlier, the movie is a Konga-sized pile of shit. So anyway, thank you for watching my review, and a little bit of a rant on Konga. And, yeah. As always, I will see you guys later. See ya!